Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to be sharing my repertoire with the Budapest Gambit, and it's part of my Austria and Hungary openings blog. So for this video, I'm going to be sharing a quite brief opening repertoire with the Budapest because it isn't the best opening for black, but it's still worth learning if you want to play a calm game. So let's go to black's perspective and let's start off with what the Budapest is. d4, knight f6, c4, and e5, and this is the start of the Budapest Gambit. And what does the Budapest Gambit do? Well, it firstly gambits a pawn, as you can see here, but it isn't really a gambit because after white takes on e5, which is almost always played, knight g4 is able to attack this pawn, and white blocks can get a lot more attackers in than white will be with defenders. But for now, let's just take a look at a few sidelines. After e5, if white plays d5 instead, black can play the move bishop b4 check, which exchanges this bad bishop right off the bat. After bishop b2 takes, knight takes, d6, this position is better for black because black gets this very good pawn chain, prepares to play f5, and doesn't have that bad dark squared bishop that what black usually has. After e5, actually at the beginning, if knight d2 is played, you can also play the exact same line with the same Budapest flavor. You can play e5, but I'll get back to this later. But for now, let's dive straight in. D takes e5, most commonly played, and here black plays knight g4. Attacks the e5 pawn. Here, white has a few sidelines, but the most important ones are knight f3, bishop f4, and h3. Bishop f4 is the main line, although knight f3 is the most commonly played move. And there's also f4, but that's a bad move, which I'll be looking at first. So, f4 keeps this pawn, but it doesn't really do that. Because after bishop c5, which attacks f2, here white is almost screwed. White has to play e3 to guard off the f2 advance. And here black is able to play d6, which protects this knight and also attacks the center. And after ed6, instead of recapturing this pawn, black can play the amazing move castles. And what castles do is prep rook e8 to attack the king. Notice that black hasn't taken the e3 pawn yet, and that's because that black does not want to exchange and give white the tempi moves to develop. So in this position, if white plays knight c3, now you can take. Why? Because after bishop takes, knight takes, attacking the queen, you're threatening a rook e8 later. After something like queen d3 and rook e8, if white plays knight e2, then bishop f5 comes, and followed by knight c2 and forking. And if you play bishop e2, bishop f5 is also extremely powerful. And now this knight is threatening knight c2 already because of this nasty discovery from the rook on e8. So, okay, not bishop f4 yet. Knight f3 is the most common move played here as white, but this is actually not the best move. It's bishop f4, and the main reason is here knight c6 is almost most commonly played, and after white plays bishop g5 or bishop f4, but they practically transpose because here black almost always plays bishop b4 check, but this position is a transposition of bishop f4. However, against knight f3, you can take advantage of that by playing bishop c5 first. This attacks f2, which allows white to play e3 first, and then you play knight c6. And this continuation is better for black, because now this bishop is stuck on c1 and isn't outside here on f4. This means that the e5 pawn will be taken easily, and the bishop is on a better square, considering that on b4 it can easily be pushed. However, that is the knight f3 sideline, and why this position is better than the main line position for black. Lastly, white can also play the move h3. And the move h3 has its key idea that after knight takes e5, this h3 pawn already preempts the move bishop g4, which usually is played by black if possible. However, this move, it's dubious in its own right because something like e3, which should be the best move, here is met by b6. Now b6 is extremely rare. Almost all players will play d6 if you are white. But with b6, this h3 pawn is starting to become a bit redundant. And this b6 move allows the bishop to come to the long diagonal. And because of this, now white's position will be a bit worse off than before. White's not worse, but a bit worse off than before, because this h3 pawn does not do anything for white. And because of that, this position is a lot better for white than black than in the main line, which is bishop f4. After bishop f4, I just recommend you go for knight c6, and after knight f3, just play bishop b4 check. This is the main line Budapest. After knight d2, queen e7, e3, takes, bishop e2, castles. Now this line is the main line, and it's an extremely calm line, which is why I said that the Budapest isn't really for something that you really want to go for a win. But white is gonna be hard for white to play here too. The main reason why the Budapest is so good actually is because that after white castles, black here can still play the same move b6. And this is almost extremely rare. Usually d6 is played at this point. But something like knight f3 can be met by knight g6. And after bishop g3, bishop b7, a3, and bishop d6. Now this looks like a disaster pawn structure for black, and maybe it is, but now black has a lot more attacking opportunities with f5 and d5. For example, here if white played queen d4, so white's trying to double up here, f5 can be played. And after rook a d1, f4 can be played. And although white will be up a pawn in this position, you can play rook a e8, and you're forcibly attacking this pawn. After queen d7, f e3, queen e7, rook e7, f e3, rook e3. This position, white is up a pawn, but white's position isn't winning whatsoever, and white could be slightly better with his extra pawn, but because of black's activity, black should be able to hold this. And finally, if we come back to knight g6, bishop g3, if bishop b7 is played here, and a3, bishop d6, so we go back to this double pawn. After queen d4, black also has the option of playing rook c8 here. And the main reason why rook c8 works is after rook fd1 is something natural, right? You just play bishop takes f3 immediately, and after bishop takes f3, knight e5. Now this is the slightly dubious line because it allows white more mobility and this d6 pawn is falling. But here you can play the move rook c6, hang on to this pawn, and although white is definitely better here, there isn't really a clear way for white to break into black's position. However, other than that said, f5 is still the best move here for black. And that's pretty much it for the Budapest in the main line. So I'll come back to the sideline that I was mentioning from before. And the reason why this sideline is bad now for white is it's like where white wants to play e4 but doesn't want to play the Shigorin. And in case you don't know what that is, it's when white plays knight c3. And here you can just play d5. And now white misses a c4 opportunity. But with knight d2, c4 will still be an option after d5, which makes this position slightly better for white than before. However, instead, here black has the move e5 with the Budapest flavor. And here, the reason why this is good is because after d takes e5 and knight g4, the move bishop f4 doesn't even exist now. And because of this, black has more mobility by taking this pawn, and the knight on d2 is just extremely awkward. And if you guys aren't familiar yet, the move h3 is a big trap in this position because black has the move knight e3, traps the queen, and if f takes e3, queen h4, and queen g3 is a mate in 2. So very clean way to beat your opponent if your opponent makes a mistake of h3, which 99% of the time they will not play. After knight g4, knight gf3 is most commonly played, and here knight c6, e4. Actually, e4 is a big mistake here. e3 is the best move. The main reason because after knight c6, if e4, bishop c5 wins on the spot, there's no way to protect f2. So that's another trap. 2 traps in one opening. But finally, after knight c6, white can play something like e3. And after you trade off, white can play b3 in this position, and d5, bishop b2. This is like a fianchetto, Fort Knox type position for black. It's like a reversed French. And if you're an e4 player and your opponent is playing this against you, you should know that your opponent is not that familiar with theory. So that is the repertoire for this line, the Budapest. Extremely good line if you want a draw. And if you're playing for the win, this is also extremely good in classical games because it has a lot of play. Just think about it. In the middle game position, there's still so many pieces on the board, and the position is already semi-open. So it's like a Sicilian or French type position where there are multiple chances for a win. And finally, if you are not too keen with this a3 move and doubling the c-pawn, you don't need to worry because the b6 line here is just an option. If you really wanted to, you can just take on d2 right now. After queen takes d2, you can play d6 now. And this line just busts all of black's winning chances because the bishop pair will become stronger in the future. But this line is extremely good for black if you're just hoping for a draw or you're just hoping for a very calm position. So that's the Budapest Gambit. An extremely simple way to break up the center, and maybe not the best opening if you want to play for a win, but for a draw or for another calm opening with an open center, go ahead with the Budapest. And I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one with more analyses in the future. Bye bye.